What football is to me now is an opportunity to spread the gospel and win championships. That first half, though, was probably the best half I've had in the game. Things happen. Football is a business. It's always a business, and it's cutthroat. Right now, I'm training 6 days a week, and I'm just looking to, Lord willing, get on a professional football team, whether that's NFL, UFL, or CFL. And I want to know who they are. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what makes them cry at night. I want to, all these things. So then you get this cohesive group that is all making each other better. Then you put that on the field. Really, you kind of get a unstoppable force. And we call it a family. I didn't have very much humility. I didn't have love in my heart. I just saw myself as this cool football player, that's playing Division I. What does it mean to life for me? That's a great question.
Welcome to the world of sports. My name is Louis Helm, and I'm a student and soccer player at Grandview University. Each week, I sit down with athletes and professionals from across the sports industry to talk about their careers and their paths into sports, but also their beliefs, values, and perspectives.
My guest in episode 12 is Jackson Waring. Jackson played quarterback for Grandview University and led the Vikings to 2 national championships. In our conversation, he opens up about the cutthroat football business, what his recent success means to him, and how he learned to deal with adversity. We also speak about the importance of faith and how it is the foundation of everything in his life. Now, here's my conversation with Jackson Waring.
Jackson, thank you for taking the time today and coming on for a chat. I really look forward to that. I like to start with all the athletes I have on with one question that is pretty broad, and it is, what does football mean to you?
Well, thank you, Louis, for having me on here. I appreciate you giving me the invite and having the opportunity to talk with you. Well, what does football mean to me? Well, it means a lot. But also at the same time, back in my high school days, early college career, it was who I was. Football was my identity. I put a lot into it, and I still put a lot into it now. But I think the purpose and the mission are very different, but also clear. So prior to me giving my life to Christ, it was, how can I get my name out there? What can my stats look like? What's the quickest way I can get to go play professionally, whatever it was. And it was very selfish, very self-centered, not looking to better others or build an environment that was looking to pretty much give skills to other men that would apply not only to football but to life. And then on the flip side of that, when I gave my life to Christ, football became a platform. It gave me the ability to lead other men. It gave me the ability to grow as a leader. It gave me the ability to grow as a football player. It gave me the ability to start to understand, myself and how to work with different kinds of individuals. But most importantly, what football is to me now is an opportunity to spread the gospel and win championships. And so the first things first is always that the football team, and wherever I go, is that the kingdom of God is being built. And so that starts off with laying down the foundation, which the foundation is Jesus. And, you can go really anywhere to any kind of successful program, and they have a solid foundation that they're on. But for me and for my focus and for what my life has been built on, which is Christ, I want to do the same for the football team. And, we can get into some other things, but I would say that's what football means to me, is sharing the gospel.
I want to definitely talk to you about your faith and your relationship with Jesus. Before we do that, I'd like to stick on the more football side of things, though. I think it's super interesting, especially for people coming from another country, to even understand how the whole journey in collegiate football, but even in high school football, is built and how it works. When you graduated Des Moines Christian High School, you went to a D1. Can you talk me through the process of getting out of high school and finding a college team that fits you?
Yeah, absolutely. Back then it was rather, and I say back then like I'm old or something. No, I'm 24 years old, but the times have changed so much since when I was in high school to what they are now. Back then it was just, you played multiple sports. You made sure that you were, just trying to be active in as many sports as you could play. But then, there was always that one that you had more of a passion for, and, your skill set was more, focused on that specific sport. And for me, that was football. And really all it was, how can I get better? How can I get my film out there? And, really just kind of building your name so that college coaches could find you. And that, as simple as it was, what I did was just go out to the field 4 or 5 times a week, have my buddies on my high school team come out and throw with me. And, we just work on whatever, routes, chemistry, connection, timing, all those things. Except as we go further along in the process, eventually you'll have college coaches come and watch you. And so the better you are with the receivers and the tight ends or whatnot, whoever you're throwing to, the better connection you have with them, the easier these throwing sessions become, because these college coaches are evaluating you on your accuracy, your consistency, your footwork, all these different aspects of playing quarterback is what they're grading you on. So, just the more prepared you could be for that, is the better off you'd be, and more than likely a scholarship would come your way. Then other than that, it was just creating highlight tapes on Huddle. I don't know if soccer uses Huddle or whatnot, but it's just a thing where someone records a game on a camera, they put it up into the system on Huddle. You can go through, create some highlights. Then you send it to your email. You take that email and you just mass send it to whoever you want, and make sure, introduce yourself, what year you are, where you're coming from, your stats, everything about you football-wise is what they want to know. And you kind of want to leave a good first impression, sort of, because, it's still over email. So, you want to let them know who you are and, what you're about. And so then you put your best plays in that highlight tape and you basically send them out. And then eventually you'll have coaches who won't say anything, and then you'll have coaches who do say something. And the coaches who do say something, those are the guys you want to interact with the most, because now they're taking interest in you. And you'll get interest from all over the place. And back in the day, it was like, I don't want to go here, so I won't text that coach. But then on the flip side of that, the turnover rate in college football, coaching staff-wise, is, they go wherever. And it's not what you know, it's who you know. And then all of a sudden, you got a D3 college football coach talking to you. They're trying to recruit you. The next thing you know, they jump up to Division I, FCS or FBS or wherever at a better school, but you didn't give them the time of day, so now they're not going to give you the time. It's just, it's kind of weird dynamics like that fluctuate throughout the whole process, but really it just comes down to making sure you're good at your sport, getting the tape, sending it out to coaches, and just being the squeaky wheel that gets the grease.
And what made you go to Illinois State?
Yeah, college coach, his name was Brian Hendricks. He was the D-line coach at Illinois State, and he was in charge of my recruiting area, or Iowa. And I loved who he was. He had a tenacious heart. He loved hard work. He enjoyed, just football guys who loved the game of football, but also, had the capabilities to take themselves to the next level. And I'm not, there's plenty of coaches out there who are just that way, but from the schools that recruited me, he stuck out the most to me, and he was genuine, he was kind, he was honest, he didn't sugarcoat things, and so I appreciated that. And so eventually, we just kept on talking, and I went on an official visit there, enjoyed it a lot, talked to a quarterback coach, the OC, head coach. It was a good fit, and it was also a good opportunity for me to try and get some time as a young quarterback and get some film. I wasn't looking to use this as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. I was planning on being here for 5 or 6 years.
Once you got there, how can I imagine the environment when you're coming in there as a freshman quarterback?
Yeah, it's different, I'll tell you that right now. You go from being a quarterback on a high school football team, it's probably no different than, how soccer would work too. You're at your, your school as a young athlete, and then you go to a new spot, and there's older athletes. There's guys who are either your age, and there's guys that range from my age to 24 years old. And so now you got all these different dynamics. You got guys who are further along in life than you. You got guys who are married. You got guys who have kids. You got, you just got people from all over the spectrum. And then here you are, a little fresh off the boat guy, and you're jumping into Division I football. And really, it doesn't have to be Division I football. It's the same way NAIA to the highest D2s. Like, that's the kind of environment you're walking into. And to be quite frank, I would say I wasn't prepared. I mean, I just went in there with a focus of, I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And, all these great things I had in mind. And then we get to workouts. We get to, 7-on-7s, all the things that come with practices. And you just sit there and you take a step back and you're like, wow, I'm not ready. Because the speed of the game changes so much. The offense, the play call styles, what the demand of the college level requires of you is entirely different from high school. And I think that was a major stepping stone that I had to overcome. And eventually I did get there, but going from being the guy in high school to not being the guy in college was entirely different, while also taking in new playbooks, new coaching staff, new players around me, different kind of culture. I'm in a totally different state. So there were some things to handle, but overall, it's nothing too big.
You said, looking back, you weren't really prepared. Can you specify a little bit more how that showed you, and also how you were then still able to adapt?
Yeah, so when I say I wasn't prepared, the preparation in which I mean is not only in my football abilities, because I'm used to playing high school speed, whereas, and this is really a key component that has different variation from all levels. And when you get to the Division I level, the speed of the game is entirely different from even here in the NAIA or even in high school, even at the D2 level, even with those powerhouses like Ferris State, Grand Valley State. The speed of the game is still extremely fast, and there's different variations to, how you process and see the field and whatnot. And it doesn't matter what level you're at; it all varies. So that was one thing that was difficult. The other thing was I was in no way, shape, or form ready to lead a bunch of men who were older than me, who had more experience than me, who understood the game better than me. So I had to win them over, and then also I had to understand and be responsible for more on my plate. Whereas in high school, you have your wristband. You still have a wristband in college, but coach says, "Hey, play 2." You look at your wristband. You go to number 2, then you read the play. Whereas you go to college, and it can still be similar to that, but there's audibles, there's adjustments, there's motions, there's 2 plays called in one, and you're killing or you're keeping the play on based on a defensive front or a shell behind the linebackers back in the secondary. So all kinds of things to take in, and I think it was overwhelming. But as I continued to kind of grasp the philosophy of the offense that I was in, and when I soon started to pick it up and get used to it, the game of the speed started to slow down a little bit through practice reps and watching a little bit of film. I didn't watch too much film in my early years, but that stuff started to progress. But the leadership and the ability to win the team over and create a culture was absolutely not there. I didn't figure that out until really the end of 2023, after my first season here at Grandview.
Still at Illinois State, you had a season where you started a good amount of games. Yeah, how was that actually?
It was fun. It was insane. So, 2020 season would have been my true freshman season, but we had to cancel it because, COVID and whatnot just coming in and messing some things up. But so that season didn't count. So really 2021 counted as a true freshman year, so I didn't have to waste a year. And so they were just like, I didn't have an OC at the time. I just got a new quarterback coach, and he was phenomenal. His name was Coach Bellomini, and he came from South Carolina. And I enjoyed going to meetings with him, talking film, breaking stuff down. And he was very gracious. He was patient, and steady working with me and getting myself prepared and whatnot. And at this time, I was a backup as a true freshman. And then when the starter went down, that is when my first game I didn't start, but the game I went in was Eastern Illinois. And I think we got our head coach's 100th win or 150th win that game. So that was a milestone for him, which is pretty cool to be a part of. But overall, speaking on terms of the game, yeah, I mean, it was insane. I mean, you're talking like your front five, O-line, guys vary from 6'5" all the way up to 6'7", and then the D-line on the other side of them, you just have giants everywhere who vary from, nose guards are usually smaller, but still at that level they're like 6'3", and if sometimes 6'2", but they're just a bowling ball of meat and power and speed and whatnot. So like, as a guy who just came from high school, really only getting practice reps, jumping into this, it was eye-opening, but I had a blast. I didn't have anything to lose. It was just, they told me, go out there, try and win some games, because we were kind of in a rebuilding period per se because of our coaching staff. We didn't have a true offensive coordinator, so our offensive scheme was heavy run, inside zone duo, and then play action off of that with some spread game in there. But it's very simple, so that part was easy for me to pick up. And I got to play against Eastern Illinois, played against Southern Illinois, Missouri State, North Dakota State a little bit, and I'm extremely grateful for it. I think it helped me develop quickly as a player because I had to be able to go out there, identify something. I'm talking in terms of how I would have thought back when I was playing then. I liked a matchup, I'm taking it. I'm not even going to look at anything else. Or I like my numbers game over here. I maybe not know what coverage this is, but I'm still working this side because I have either 3 against 3 or I have better leverage against a defender over this receiver. So I'm going to work that side. And even though I didn't have an OC, they still made it easy for me to handle, which I was appreciative for, and that also helped me have some confidence in that aspect too. And with that, Missouri State was my birthday game. I think we played on like October 7th, and that first half, we ended up losing that game, unfortunately. That first half, though, was probably the best half I've had in a game. Threw for 303 yards, had 3 touchdowns. We were moving the ball, and it was fun. I was like, dang, this is crazy. This is insane. But then after that, kind of went downhill, threw 3 interceptions, probably maybe had like 75 yards passing. But I mean, that's just the name of the game. So, I also understood kind of a little bit of adversity, how to bounce back from that. And then I guess I got a little taste of, leading a football team, but it wasn't in the aspect of like guys looking to me. It was just I played quarterback, so that's who was in the game, and so they got to play for me. They had to listen to me, this and that, but I didn't have the reins per se as if like it was here at Grandview. But nonetheless, it was a blessing. It was awesome. I enjoyed it a lot, and I won't forget it.
The time at Illinois State obviously didn't go probably the way you would have hoped for it to go, hence why you also didn't stay there for the whole time. I read in an interview you did that it was the hardest or one of the hardest times of your life, going from starter to around 4th or something on the depth chart. How did that impact you as a player?
Things happen. Football is a business, especially doesn't matter what level you're at, NCAA, NAIA. It's always a business, and it's cutthroat. And there were some changes that internally within the coaching staff that happened. They brought in their own guy. I had just gotten surgery on my shoulder, so I was rehabbing throughout that spring semester of 2022. And so, it is what it is. I still competed my butt off. I was gunning back to get that starting job back, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen, but I still had a blast while I was doing it. I got to play wide receiver, played tight end, played running back. I did all this stuff over on scout team against our number one, our first team defense, which was within itself another eye-opening experience and allowed me to understand the game just a little bit better, but from a different point of view. So that opened up my vocabulary and ways I could interact with future teammates and be on the same page as them when we're talking about routes and timing and this and that. But other than that, going from first string to fourth or fifth string you're not playing. So it doesn't really matter if you're fourth or fifth or third or second. There's only one quarterback on the field, so you're not playing whatsoever. So it was absolutely tough, and it was a little bit heart-wrenching. And I first didn't really know how to fathom it, and this is when I was kind of contemplating, what I was doing with my life, what exactly was I playing football for, because now, at first, I'm playing quarterback as a true freshman at Division I school. There's outside voices and this and that, people telling you all these kinds of things. It kind of fills your head up, and it doesn't it does. And so I let that get to me, and just like I told you, prior to giving my life to Christ, that's the kind of stuff I was looking for. And eventually that stuff goes away, and it's not fulfilling, and it leaves a void in your heart. And that is what I started to question, along with some other decisions that I was making too that were not benefiting me in any way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of conversation in my own head about what I wanted to do, who I wanted to give my life to, and how I would continue to keep playing football. And so then moving forward, eventually getting to Grandview, that fall semester 2022, I gave my life to Christ, and he ultimately is the reason, one, I've had all of this success, and it amounts to nothing to me, because Paul tells us that in Acts 20:17 through 38. That's my life verse, and we know from Paul, he was a Pharisee. Before he gave his life to Christ, he was a high-ranking official. He was a Pharisee. He was born of a Hebrew tribe. He had all these things going for him, and he was super zealous of his forefathers. And so when he heard about this Christian faith, he didn't want anything to do with it. So he went out and persecuted and this and that. And then, boom, Jesus met him right where he was, and Paul immediately knew that what he was doing was wrong and that Jesus was God. And so he gave his life to Christ, and he forgot. He didn't forget. He never looked back on the things that he once was. And so that kind of portrays into a little bit of how I view my life, where, I had all these things going for me, but it was more, kind of like Paul. It was selfish, it was arrogance, it was pride, it was, all those things that are in enmity with God, and then went back and looked into who Jesus was, but also really who he said he is, which he said he is God. And, we have eternal life through him, through his finished work on the cross. And I was like, that's what I want. I want Jesus to be my master, regardless of whatever is in front of me. This is the only way that I'm going to be able to get through this. And so that's what I did. I gave my life to Jesus and never looked back, and he has changed my life immensely. And, whatever awards or whatever games or championships I win, the way I see it is that it's just a small mere testament of the Lord's faithfulness compared to the great things that I've seen him do in the hearts of men, and even in the heart of myself. So, I guess it's just kind of a glimpse into getting into the story of Grandview.
You mentioned at the beginning other decisions at that time you made that maybe weren't the best for you. Do you want to share those?
Yeah, I mean, it was sexual immorality, getting hammered with a bunch of guys, really football team, and making decisions that you shouldn't be doing, or putting yourself in situations that you absolutely should not be in. And at that time, I thought it was cool because everyone else was doing it. It was kind of like a follower mindset where, if he's doing it, then, it's okay if I do, so why not dabble in it a little bit. And not treating people the right way too. I didn't have very much humility. I didn't have love in my heart. I just saw myself as this cool football player, that's playing Division I football, and I got all this stuff going for me. And I'm, whatever it is, I used it as a way to put myself on a pedestal, which ultimately I fell to rock bottom, which ultimately through that I found Christ, because at some point you're going to figure out that none of these things are good for you, but also at the same time they don't fulfill you, and you're just going to keep on chasing the dragon, regardless of whatever it is that you're chasing, whether it's money, drugs, women, fame, wealth. It doesn't matter. It's always fleeting. And so the only thing that's not fleeting is the love that Jesus has for you, and the purpose and the vision and the work that he has set out for you once you give your life to him. And so ultimately, that's what I concluded, was that this is what I want and that this is what I will do. And it's not necessarily this is what I want, it's what I need. We all need Jesus. And regardless if you want to make that decision right now or make that decision later, you'll figure it out for yourself in due time, and Jesus will meet you where you're at. So that is where Jesus met me, and yeah.
Did you think you need to hit rock bottom to build that relationship with Jesus?
Did I? Yes. If I did not hit rock bottom, I don't know where I'd be right now. Mainly because I was just, blind to it. Like, I heard it all the time. I saw all the time. I grew up in a Christian household. I went to Des Moines Christian. So my heart was hardened. I didn't really care for it. It went in one ear and out the other. So I really was just trying to do things on my own, which eventually you'll find out that you can't do nothing alone. And the only thing that being alone does is it's a weakness, depression, anxiety, all of these different ways that the enemy can get to you is just even better when you're isolated. Well, there's a creator, and he's got a plan for you, and he personally wants to have a relationship with you. And so that's what I needed for myself. And so with all those decisions I made, I realized that they were just absolute futility, and nothing was really coming from them. And so I wanted to live a life that honored the Lord. I wanted to live a life that was of integrity, of discipline, treat others with compassion and love and kindness. Just do a whole 180.
What's the meaning of life for you?
What is the meaning of life for me? That's a great question. It is serving the Lord Jesus with all my heart, mind, and soul, and loving my neighbor as myself, and living a life that's worthy of the gospel, and making sure that, not being cared about if people know me, but making sure that people know who I'm for. What would you say the meaning of life is?
What would I say the meaning of life is? I don't have an answer for you that is as straightforward as yours is.
That's okay.
think the meaning of life for me is to be a kind person, and to also enjoy the very limited time that I have in my life. And that's two big points for me, but I'm actually working a lot on figuring out that question, and I wouldn't say that I have a definitive answer yet.
That's all right.
Okay, this feels like a hard cut now, but I want to get back to Grandview now. Thanks for sharing that, though. That's
absolutely
very insightful. You transferred to Grandview after your stint at Illinois State, kind of, I guess your hometown team nearly. How did that move come about?
It was really my only option. I had Grandview, and then I had Central Missouri, who's out there in Warrensburg. I didn't take a visit to Central Missouri. I just took a visit here. I had a couple of guys, Seth Jewell. I don't know if that name rings a bell. He was back here in I think he got here in 2021 and then left in 2023, but we played ball together back in high school. So that was one. And then there was a running back named Avery Gates, who I played Pee Wee ball with. And then Jordan Cum, who graduated with me this past year. We played Pee Wee ball growing up, and he was at I think he was at a JUCO.
What is PV ball?
Just like we were little kids.
Okay.
Just running around with big old pads and helmets. But Jordan is my best friend from childhood, even to this day, and he was thinking about coming here too. And then Isaiah Toki was on a team that we played with for, it's called like the River Battle Bowl. It was Iowa versus Nebraska. It was like this all-star team, and Toki was there. Then he went elsewhere. I think he went to Iowa Western, and then he came to Grandview. So I was just like, I'm going to go to Grandview. And plus I also had conversations with Coach Knock and Coach Fulton, Coach Woodley, and those were all great too. I love learning about, how they run their program and, what they're about. Coach Woodley's thing was do right, do your job, and dominate. And they didn't just care about who you were on the football field, but they made sure that you were holding yourself accountable off the field as well with your studies and with just how you carried yourself as a man. So I liked that a lot. I didn't see really any partiality. They were going to play the best guy, which is another thing I appreciated from previously at my other school. So I just pulled the trigger on Grandview, and pretty much the rest is history.
It really is history. Yeah, the greatest success the program has ever seen in football. Inside the quarterback community is the wrong word, but I feel it's a little bit comparable to goalkeeping, because you have a bunch of guys that are pretty much competing for one spot. It's not like it might be in other positions where there's a bit more of a switch around, turnover. Some people can share reps. It really is just one guy and he's taking everything kind of. How is the communication and the relationship with those guys?
That's a great question. I suppose it's different with wherever you're at. It's a very competitive position, as I'm sure goalie is the way you just explained it. That's exactly how quarterbacking is too. There's only there's one goalie on the field, like you said, or maybe you get to split reps. That's exactly how quarterback is. So the best player is going to play, and whether he is not a good leader or not, if he can play the game well, he's going to play. And so usually based on a quarterback's leadership, probably goes the same way for being a goalie in his desired way of leading others, not just in his position group, but also the team. It can have a direct impact on what that room looks like. And so, for instance, our quarterback room here at Grandview, I made sure I treated everybody the same. Like, there was no favoritism. There was no, well, just because I don't like the way this guy looks, I don't like him, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was, no, I want to make this guy better. I want to make sure that he understands the game. I want to build up his leadership skills too. It didn't matter who you were. Like, I wanted not only that quarterback room to be well prepared, but also I wanted the rest of the team to be well prepared too. And so I think if you have that kind of leadership at the top, it trickles down to the bottom, and then you have a bunch of individuals who come together as one, and they work towards one goal despite their position on the team, whether they're playing or not. And so then you get this cohesive group that is all making each other better. Then you put that on the field, really, you kind of get a unstoppable force, and we call it a family. And that's exactly what it was. So yeah, you either get two sides of the coin. You either get a room that is tense, divisive, or you get one that is loving and looking to build others up.
And focusing on the quarterback position specifically, because if you're looking from the outside, and I am familiar with football, like I would say I understand everything that's happening, not in every detail of course, but I get like the basics. How complicated is it to learn the whole playbook?
I guess how well do you do in school? I'm just kidding.
Is that related though?
The way I looked at it was football was a class. Like, it wasn't just something you went out there on the field and did. There was a whole bunch of things you could be doing off the field that you could treat as if it were a class for you. So you could understand the game better. You could understand the offense better. You could understand why you are running a specific play against a specific front, or you're running a specific pass concept against a specific shell, or what do you do when you have safety rotation? Do you work away or do you work into it? Is there a blitz off of it? What do you do against a 3 down? What do you do against a 4 down? There's all these different variations of the same look, which is exactly what Grandview's offense does. Is we want to play smoke and mirrors. We do a lot of stuff out of tight splits. We do a lot of play action pass. We want to make things look the same, but we also want it to be different. And so I think just the more you learn it, which you have to take the time to do that, because if you don't want to take the time to do that, then you're not going to be a successful quarterback. I'm sure soccer's the same way. Even with being a goalie, like, you know when to block the ball, you know when to cover, and then after you cover, whether just to toss it off to a guy to the side or you just punt that thing to the other side of the field. Like, there's different things you do in order to understand the game better, but also put yourself in a better position over other players that you want to play over. And so it's no different. How willing are you to sacrifice things that are not of the utmost importance? And so that's really what it comes down to. Really, anything. If you want to be good at something, you put your mind to it and work at it.
But I'm guessing the mind or the mental side, actually the cognitive side is a better word to put it, of being a quarterback is super important, probably even more important than your physical attributes.
Yeah, absolutely. The quarterback is, it's cool to throw the ball far and throw it accurately or put it in a tight window or, make the right read. But at the same time, how do you make those plays? Well, you've got to be able to read defense. You've got to be able to put yourself in the right position. You've got to be able to put your eyes in the right spot to know where you want to go with the football. So 100% quarterback is more of a mental game than it is a physical game. And so I think the better off you can prepare yourself, the better you understand the X's and O's, and also the preparation that it takes to go into a game and be able to win it from off the field is just as important as how well you can throw or run the ball.
You figured that out pretty well in your time at Grandview. Does it feel better to win nationals for the first time or to repeat?
I don't know. First one was pretty cool because I never won. I guess I've never really won a game that big. We made, back in high school, we made playoffs for the first time in 12 years, but never really won a championship. I won a championship in 8th grade, but I guess 8th grade don't count. It's still kid ball. But the first one was sweet. And then the second one, I would say, was really probably even sweeter because we finished it off the right way. But also, Coach Peterson at the beginning of last year going to spring ball, his thing was prove it. Because everyone was like, okay, everyone can do it once. Can you do it twice? Go prove it. And we did exactly that. We didn't care about who was saying what or what are we looking like or whatnot. We just put our nose to the grindstone and we worked. We made sure we were getting better. We made sure we didn't become complacent with winning a national championship prior. We needed to find ways that we could still get better at the game and also get better at understanding it. And that came with becoming a tighter group, guys stepping up into leadership roles, and really just going out there and having a blast, playing free, and really not caring what anybody thinks except for the 11 guys on the field.
Does that chip that comes with winning and being the target number one for the whole season when you're playing against everybody. You obviously everybody wants to beat you because you're now the top dog. Does that influence anything, or is it really just putting the head down and taking out all that noise and just getting to work?
Exactly. The second one you just said.
Okay.
People want to beat you because you're the top guy. But that doesn't change the way you practice. That doesn't change the way you lift. That doesn't change the way you watch film. None of that. I mean, it can. Like winning a national championship can go to your head, and but it only lasts for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden everyone's starting to prepare for the next one. It goes back to everything is absolute futility, and so a great way to look at it is, hey, thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity, this moment, but at the same time, this isn't what we're here to do. And that's kind of the mindset I had was, yeah, national championship was great. I give that to the Lord Jesus. I give that back to Grandview University, but we've still got work to do. And even after the second one, there's still work to be done. It never stops. So really just don't be complacent and make sure that what you are working towards is bigger than not only just yourself, but also bigger than the end goal. Everyone thinks the end goal is a national championship, which is a big feat, but it's not. And I think the reason why we've been so successful in building what we've built here the past 2 years is because our end goal is not a national championship. It is developing men to not only lead themselves, but lead others the correct way, and to give them insight into what that looks like, which, again, at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about the foundation being Jesus. Well, that's exactly it, because following Jesus and spreading the gospel doesn't last for 5 months or however long the season is. It lasts for a lifetime. So whether you win or lose, you're still winning, because not only do you have Jesus in your heart, but you are building and constructing a program that is built around centralities of integrity, of discipline, of guys who are willing to sacrifice, of selflessness, of humility, of guys who actually love each other and are willing to, put their bodies on the line because they love the guy next to them so much that, hey, I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna smack this guy, and I'm gonna make sure that we go get in the end zone, or I'm gonna plug this hole so that my linebackers can come and fill their holes, and just it's complementary football, really, and that's what we're instilling at Grandview.
I always like to ask the question to everybody who has had great success on the field as a team, but also individually, how their relationship is with that success. Winning Player of the Year is obviously, on an individual level, probably the biggest thing you can do. What does that mean to you, though?
I think it's just something that comes with being obedient and being willing to follow the Lord and live for Him instead of living for yourself. And I think we see that all throughout the Bible. And even if I don't win the NAI Player of the Year, even if I don't win a national championship, it's still the same. It's everyday faithfulness, it's an obedience, and it doesn't change my outlook on life regardless of if I win or lose something. It's my focus is changing other people's lives and helping them come to Christ, but also lead themselves, not only as a man, but also with their family, and wherever else they go in life with work or whatnot. It's the most important thing is how you carry yourself as a man.
The work, you said, doesn't finish once you win. Obviously, it does finish though for you as quarterback at Grandview. And what's next?
Yeah, training 6 days a week right now. It's kind of funny because some of the guys, because I'm here pretty much every day in the office just doing who knows what on the whiteboard. But sometimes I'll see a handful of guys and they're like, hey, what you up to? And I'm like, I'm not really up to anything different. I'm doing everything you guys are doing, just without you guys. And I just tell them, cherish it, enjoy it, because it does fly by. It feels like 2020 was 6 years ago, which is unreal. And my college career is over. But I'm extremely grateful for what the Lord has allowed me to do and what He's blessed me with. But right now I'm training 6 days a week, and I'm just looking to, Lord willing, get on a professional football team, whether that's NFL, UFL, or CFL. And work doesn't stop, just like I told you. And at the next level, they really don't care what you did at the college level. They want to see what you can do now, and they want to see if you can be a healthy asset for them in the future. Because now you're talking about money, you're talking about livelihoods and whatnot. So you need to make sure that you're not putting anybody's job in jeopardy, and also you have to think about yourself too. And if you got a girlfriend, or if you have whatever it is, a kid or whatnot. I'm not speaking for myself in terms of a kid. I do have a girlfriend, but you've got to be able to provide for them. So now you take that next step into kind of professional life in a way. It's not really college anymore, where things are necessarily being paid for by the school and scholarship and whatnot. Like, there's some things that are still being paid for through agents, and people are generous and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to be able to come up with and produce for not only your livelihood, but what you want to build for the future. And so that's really what's going on right now with my mindset, and making sure that I'm doing what is necessary to make sure that that is a reality, all while doing it the correct way and aligning myself with the Lord while doing this.
What makes you confident that you can play professional football?
My leadership and I say my leadership, but it's also my ability to play football. I'm a playmaker. I can read the field well. I understand the game. I can win a locker room. I can, not necessarily there to motivate, but if I need to motivate, I can. I hold myself to a high standard. I hold myself accountable. I'm not going to tell anybody to do something that I wouldn't do, which I think is very important, especially coming from a leadership point of view. You want to lead your men safely, but also at the same time, if you're willing to go and take that risk, you need to lead from the front and be able to show that you're capable of what you're saying. Actions speak louder than words. And I think that I can be valuable to any team that decides to pick me up, and I'm willing to do things the right way, and I'm not in it for the money, I'm not in it for the fame, I'm not in it for anything like that. Again, it's the same thing I did at Grandview. I'm here to spread the gospel. I'm here to build men up. I'm here to lead them. I'm here to build the kingdom of God, and with that, we can go win championships.
One of your biggest assets is that you're a good leader. How did you become a good leader?
It all just comes full circle, man. The Lord Jesus. And so, I got my master's in organizational leadership, and talked about all kinds of different forms of leadership. You have transformative, you have authoritarian, you have authoritative, you have servant leadership, which is the leadership that Jesus used. And so the reason why I think servant leadership is the best, and that the reason why I think that I'm a good leader, is because when you take on a servant attitude, you are willing to go low to bring others high. And so one of the best examples of humility and servant leadership that we see in the Bible is Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And you got to think about that for a second. You have Jesus, who is God, who was seated at the right hand of the Father, came down and took on our humble form, and he is washing one of the dirtiest areas of the body, the feet, which has dirt, crusty toenails. I mean, you name it. When you look at feet, they're not very attractive. And so now you have the Son of Man washing a sinner's feet. And that, I think, is one of the best examples of humility that we can have from someone who I put my life with and my full trust in. And so through that, that's how I want to go and serve others. I don't want to receive. I want to give, because Jesus tells us that it is better to give than it is to receive. So what can I give you? I can give you love. I can give you compassion. I can build you up with words of life that are refreshing to the bones, and that brings a joyful heart. I can bring you gifts. I can, all these things. I can help you with things that you're needing help with. packaging food for the poor, giving to the poor, helping a friend with a project. It doesn't matter what it is. A servant-led mindset is making sure that you are putting yourself last and putting others first. And what that does then next is allows others to see your actions giving back to those around you. And when they see that, it kind of goes back to how I was talking about our actions allow for people to become curious and ponder, what is life, or why does he do that? Well, it's the same thing here. Why does he always want to serve? Why does he want to do that, do this? Well, one, because that's what my master does, Jesus. And two, it helps them also understand what being a servant is too, which is being humble, having humility, putting yourself last, and making sure that others are taken care of before yourself. And then you get this chain reaction of servant leaders going and making more servant leaders. And that ultimately, from like a leadership and cultural standpoint, specifically speaking about Grandview, now you got a bunch of guys who take on the servant-led mindset, and they start helping each other. They start looking to build each other up. They start putting each other last, or putting themselves last. And then ultimately, all of that is focused on one goal. And you don't have to worry about anybody having a selfish mindset or thinking of themselves before whatever the team is demanding. You have everyone working together in unison on making sure that the team is at its best when everyone is putting themselves last. And so what servant leadership does is just creates basically, and I'm not saying servant leadership is the only one that does that, but it's the one that does it best and is the most effective. And that's what I've come to find out, not only in the word here, but also even just reading through the textbooks and writing about it in my classes.
Before you did your master's in organizational leadership, you majored in psychology. I was wondering what your biggest takeaways were from studying that.
Psychology?
Yeah.
It was a good bachelor's to take and whatnot. I think there's just so much to it. And one of the reasons, why I necessarily didn't go too much farther into it is because I necessarily didn't agree with, I guess, the approaches that psychology takes. I mean, it's great to understand why people do what they do and are, either attracted to something or not attracted to something. But the way that it's constructed is you have people who could quite possibly go into the same thing, trying to help people who are going through something in their life that they can't quite figure out or put a finger on. And then, they start, medication, therapy sessions and whatnot. I'm not saying those are bad, but when you start getting people to speak on things that are traumatic or people that go through depression or anxiety and whatnot, and you get them talking about it over and over and over and over, it's like a never-ending cycle, and then they just get stuck in it, and then all of a sudden you put medications on top of it, and then there's a dependency on those. And I'm not saying psychology is bad. I think it's great. But I also would say that psychology also pointed me to Jesus and his deliverance because, we see Jesus deliver individuals from demonic spirits. We see him deliver people from sickness. We see people get delivered from depression, anxiety, and this and that. And I think that these are like Band-Aids on a chopped off leg, with these therapists who could quite possibly have the same issues, trying to help people with the issues, that are hurting them, where you have someone who deliberately tells you, hey, my burden and my yoke are easy and light. Come to me, you who are heavy laden and burdened, come to me and I will give you rest. And he's saying here, like, those of you who struggle with, hardships like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, all these things, Jesus will deliver you from that. And it goes back to the conversation we had earlier, you have to be willing to make that decision for yourself. And I'm not saying that these therapists and whatnot are bad, but they just never get to a solution or a conclusion. It's just like they just keep turning over the same rocks and finding the same answers. And I think one thing for me too is that Jesus gave me something else, which was peace, which was refuge, which was safety, and also which was deliverance. And I think that ultimately, while I was learning psychology, and it was fun and all, and there were some things that didn't really stick with me, and there were some that did, but ultimately it just made me even more sure that who I was following was better than what really the world was offering.
That's an interesting conclusion, and there's definitely that point of just over going over the same thing that kind of like reassures you of the things. I unfortunately don't know the term, but I've learned about that phenomenon or heard about it quite recently too. After you're done with your school now, obviously, professional football is one pathway. That is, if it works out for you, still only a very temporary thing you can do though. So what are the other professions, or I guess the other interests in your life you want to pursue, also keeping in mind what you said before in terms of providing for a family and leading a life in the society we have?
Mm-hmm. I would say right now it's coaching. I had, U.S. Marshals is on the table for me too. I had an internship with our Southern District Marshal Office here in Des Moines 2 years ago during the summer, which was awesome.
Is that some Army-related stuff, Marshals?
They're federal agents.
Okay.
Yeah, that was really fun. Sat in on some court cases. One of the court cases, it was like, how, you see those things on TV and it's a packed courthouse and they like draw the pictures of everybody's faces and, they have those pictures and whatnot. That's exactly what this looked like. And it was with this guy who, what was it? He was getting sentenced for fraud, and he had created like some fake LLCs, and I think he was just being like he's either like a finance advisor or something of that matter, and he was just taking advantage of old people, and he ended up accruing around like 1.8 million dollars, but that was just a guesstimate of what maybe he actually made, because he spent all that money and he was using it for his child's education. And that was the other thing too. His whole family was there, which was another really interesting perspective to see too, because his daughters were crying, his wife was crying, and then you come to find out that his wife more than likely knew that he was doing this, because when he got caught, she ended up started selling off some of his assets, because he had a bunch of stuff. He had a lake house in the Ozarks. He had all kinds of boats. He had a yacht. Like this dude was just living lavish. He paid for all of his all of his daughters were over the age of 18, so he was raising them on this stolen money. And then you also had the victims also were there too, and they gave testimony to everything that had happened. And it was just like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. And then at the very end, the judge was like, Mr. So-and-so, do you have anything to say, or would you like to apologize? And he just stands up, cold face, and he goes, no. Turns around and walks. And I was like, all right, this dude means business for
fraud.
For fraud. Coaching or marshals?
Yeah. Coaching quarterbacks, that is? Or
yeah, I mean, if I go into coaching, I would eventually one day want to be a head coach somewhere.
Is that an actual plan you have, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess it makes sense with how detailed and how detailed you work with everything, that is something you'd like to pursue.
Well, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So what's the dynamic on the soccer team? Like, Were you on the soccer team last year?
Yeah.
What was the difference between last year's soccer team compared to the national championship team?
You're talking about the year before we won. I wasn't. I was here in the spring,
Okay.
but I wasn't during the fall season, and that's like for football, like the spring is kind of irrelevant. And I mean, it wasn't for me, but in general, this fall is where all the action happens. So, but I mean, I've heard things and from like other people, and I think the biggest difference was that the year before we won, the team wasn't a cohesive group. There was little groups of nationalities. I think that's kind of special for soccer teams, is that you have so many internationals on, that it's very easy to become a group thing of like, those are some European boys, some South Americans, and they just group up. And then from what I've heard is that they also had leaders that weren't leading by example, basically. And I think those things changed a lot to this year, because we were by no means the most gifted team, but our group just made up for it, and the team chemistry we had.
I guess it goes to show that you don't always need talent. You just need guys who are willing to buy in
And work hard.
Darn right.
Yeah, and I was speaking with Plummer, the AD, the other day, and that was also super interesting, because that's pretty much what he said, is like, Grandview's not the right fit for everybody, but there is some values that people here tend to have, and that's just a hard work ethic and just going to work and showing up every day, and just making each other better by keeping or holding everybody accountable and just getting to work, and that's, I think that's what happened, and it's now completely interesting to see how that's going to develop, because we had a lot of seniors and a lot of people that are out of here now. So
are you coming back?
I'm pretty sure.
Ball's in your court then right now. If you're planning on coming back, then now you have an opportunity to not only take what you guys learned last year to win the national championship, but also to, I mean, not saying, kind of like what Coach Peterson told us, prove it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why not go do it again? You guys have nothing to lose. And then you have a guy like yourself who's seasoned and knows what it takes. It's not all about the talent, but you know, how well can you get the other guys to rally around you? So,
yeah, definitely. It's a great opportunity, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
When I was, just doing some research, I found in a scouting interview you did a couple of years ago that when they asked you about your biggest weakness, and you said perfectionism is your biggest weakness. Do you still agree with that?
Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, you want to be perfect at everything you do, especially like in a sport per se. I don't want to be perfect in my everyday life. It's not possible. It would be a unrealistic reality. And it's the same way in a sport too. But it's, when you say perfection in a sport, it's, you know, you want to execute a play a certain way, and if it doesn't go that way, it just irks your gears. But I think you should have that kind of mentality though at the same time, but understand that even if something does go wrong, you still need to be able to adapt to it. You need to be able to understand why that happened. You need to be able to just move on and roll with the punches. And so I would still say that is my weakness, but I have definitely improved on how to really overcome it and just be able to remain positive, look to the next play, and keep the focus on my teammates and moving the ball.
Why did you label it a weakness?
Oh, because if, you know, in 2023, I would say is like when because I had conversations about this with Coach Fulton, and we would just talk about it all the time. And ultimately in 2024, I just gave myself a word, encourage, because through perfectionism, if something doesn't go the way you plan it to or the way you want to execute something, in turn you get angry or you start pointing a finger, you start blaming others, and you're angry at the whole whatever's going on, and that can tear people down. That can ruin your mindset, your focus, and what you're trying to accomplish. It's a barrier that you got to overcome, and so that's why it's a weakness. And I wouldn't say it's like a big weakness of mine now, but it's something that I always make sure that I'm dotting my I's and crossing my T's to make sure that it's not something that's affecting me or my teammates moving forward. So that would be how it's a weakness, is just letting it just being negative.
So it's more of a weakness in the true sense of it, but the way you talk about it, it seems like you found a good way of dealing with it, because I would consider myself fairly similar in that sense, and I had conversations about it. And for me, it is also like, I think there's a great Kobe quote where he said, I strive for perfection every day, knowing full well that I'll never achieve it. And for me, that's the way how I look at trying to be perfect, which I think is actually a pretty healthy way to get to your best without hitting down on yourself if it doesn't go that way, because that's just impossible.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like you'll fall to the level of your preparation. So for guys like you and I, if we are looking to be great, be perfect in everything we do, and we understand that we're going to fail regardless, well, when the time actually comes to execute a penalty kick or a 2-point conversion, well, we prepare for this moment. Whether we've messed up or not, we understand what it's going to take in order to win this moment. So our mindset's already there, and then it's just secondhand nature to go out and perform it well.
What do you think is the key to being confident, especially in those high pressure situations?
I think it goes back to pretty much what I just said, is you ultimately prepare. And when I say prepare, it's pretty broad. You have people from all over, the spectrum of what prepare can mean to them. But if you're not preparing with intent and a willingness to visualize yourself winning that moment or being successful in whatever it is you're doing, then you are more than likely going to fall to that level of preparation in the moment that is placed in front of you. So within your preparation and practice or speech or project or whatever, make sure that you're doing everything with full intent, that your focus is there and only there, and then being relaxed, having fun, and not being in a hurry, because good things never happen when you're in a hurry. So if you do those things, you're not only making yourself better, but you're also making others better. And really, when you're playing a team sport like soccer and basketball and football and whatnot, if you can exemplify that through your actions and preparation for when those moments come, then the guys around you will do the same.
Yeah. So it really does come down to preparation.
Always.
Yeah, I want to slowly wrap this up. It's been so fascinating, and at the core of all of it, obviously, is your relationship with faith. How did that develop in the first place? Because as you mentioned at the very beginning, that has not always been the way it is right now.
Like, how did I develop my faith?
Yeah,
I gave my life to Christ in 2022, right before I came to Grandview, and it was like a place of isolation and reflection. And I know I say isolation. I know we talked about isolation earlier and what the enemy can do with that. Satan can do with that, and he can put thoughts into your head. He can, bring you down with, how you allow your feelings to affect you. But also at the end of the day, that's not what this was. I think it was a building period because I had given my life to Christ in that moment. It was now a period of myself trying to figure out, well, okay, now how do I do this? And so open up the Word here, write down notes, read some books that pertain to the Word, but have kind of a little bit of a simpler way of explaining it. And then just going out and applying it. And so through that, eventually, once I gave my life to Jesus, I get to Grandview. And in 2023, it was nothing like it was in 2024 or 2025. I was more so there, but I knew what I needed to do. And what I needed to do was build relationships. And what's the quickest way I can build a relationship with somebody on campus? The dining hall. So I went up to the dining hall, and I would probably sit in there for like 2 or 3 hours. And I'd be eating and taking my time with it, but like 2 or 3 hours in the dining hall, you're seeing a lot of people come through, and there's football players that come through all the time up there. And so every time I'd be sitting with a new group every 30, 45 minutes, and I would just be getting to know them. But I never became like a vocal leader until 2024. So everything in 2023 was understanding and making sure that I understood who I was working with, how to work with them, and how I should conduct myself. And then it was also making sure that the relationships I built were authentic. They weren't just like shallow and only just getting to know them because they're my teammate. No, like I want to know them because not only they're my teammate, but they're someone I'm going to be with for the next 3 years, and I want to know who they are. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what makes them cry at night. I want to, all these things. And ultimately, I think that's also part of the success with what we've experienced over the past 2 years. And then fast forward to 2024, now I'm this vocal leader while also leading by example. I start doing Bible studies. I start, kind of exemplifying my faith through my actions more in front of the team and by breaking them down. Sometimes we break down a Bible verse, sometimes we just break down on a saying and then kind of talk it out and what it meant. There's all kinds of things we did. Like we didn't just go into the weight room and clap it up and be like, okay, team on 3, 1, 2, 3, team. Like, no way, that's a bunch of hogwash. That ain't gonna do nothing. We would go in there and it would kind of be like a learning environment. Not only were we there to lift, but we were also there to motivate and help us understand what we were working towards. And so with everything that I was talking about prior with building the kingdom of God and laying down the foundation for Jesus, and how do you do that? The way you exemplify your actions is through serving others and loving them and building them up with words of life and being compassionate and disciplined and living with integrity, because who you are behind closed doors is who you are out in public. And so, all these things tie together. And ultimately, this is the Lord working in my heart and also Him helping me navigate different individuals who don't believe and individuals who do believe. And I can meet you right in the middle and give you a template of what it looks like to conduct yourself as a solid man. And Jesus gives us that, but I don't have to, because remember I said I'm not going to lord it over you. I'm going to give you this example, which is through my actions. And with myself doing that, I'm able to reach both sides of the spectrum. And so that was another way that the foundation was being built. And then also through the Bible studies, I opened it up to the team. It was really just only the team who this was open up to, and it was open to anybody. And so then that started to grow, and we went over Philippians, we went over Corinthians, we did James, we did a little bit of Proverbs, we did John, and I think we did one more. But anyways, yeah, so we went through all these books, and guys are asking questions, guys are curious. There were non-believers there were believers there, and I wanted to be welcoming and open space, but I also wanted to help them understand that, this isn't just, you don't just live by these axioms. There's a motive behind this template that I've given you, and it's for you to find out and seek, because those who seek will find. And for some of the guys that did that, they found. And so fast forward to the summer of 2025, I got to baptize 5 of my teammates. I've listened and I've heard teammates of mine give their lives to Christ. I've also listened and heard of teammates who want to get to know Christ more. And so ultimately, like, I know I've kind of been all over the place with this question, but like this is how the Lord has been moving, not only in my life and in my heart in order to give these guys what they need, but also what the Lord has been working and doing in the hearts of men, behind the scenes that I don't see. Had guys baptized, Bible studies being held. We finished the book of John, and all that. The book of John is a very personal and different look into Jesus' life and who Jesus was and what he did. And then the very second to last book, Jesus says, it is finished. And we read that the week before the national championship. And then going into the national championship after we won, it was the 70th anniversary of the NAIA national championship. And number 7 in biblical terms is a completion of work, or complete. Because you have the 7 days of creation, and on the 7th day God rested and everything was complete. And so then you see everything come full circle, and you're just like I'm finished here at Grandview, and this is everything the Lord has done, and this is his faithfulness, and boom, he just said it is complete by what had just been finished.
I have one last thing I want to pick your brain on, and it's pretty funny because when I was trying to find out some stuff about you, I was thinking like, okay, I'm interested to see how that conversation goes. And then I read that you like to eat food, and I was like, okay, that's cool, because on my team I do have the rep that I probably eat like twice as many meals as everyone else. So that matches. I saw you said that football is only a game, but what really counts for you is building meaningful and long-lasting relationships with your teammates, which is also, I think, a great perspective to take on that. And then lastly, you said reading non-fiction and historically based books, which is also, I think, fairly unusual nowadays. At least that's my opinion. And it is at the same time, though, something I enjoy. So I was wondering, A, what's your favorite book? And B, what book would you recommend everybody to read?
Oh, gosh. That's a great question. My favorite book, right here, the Bible. No, it is my favorite book, but in terms of this, I'm all over the place with the nonfiction. So there's this book, I don't know why I can't think of the name right now, but it's about 2 brothers who were Muslim, and they converted to Christianity. It's called Unveiling Islam. That is a very insightful book on the contrast of the Quran and the Hebrew Bible, and how the Quran takes and alters what the Bible says and uses it for its own. And it sounds very similar, but it's extremely different. And then also there's so much more that goes into it, and it's about these 2 brothers' stories of everything that had happened. Their family almost kills them, and because, well, in traditional Islam, like, they do not like that at all. Any kind of convert away from the religion is a very heavy offense to them. And then there's another one, Art of War, Sun Tzu, very renowned warlord, war general, and he's got a lot of great stuff. And we just talked a lot about preparation, and there's this one quote that I told the guys one time, and it's like, let me see if I can remember it. Yeah, you cannot know if you are prepared or not, but in your preparation, you must prepare with all your heart, might, and soul, and then you will know, or no, then you will be ready. So basically, going back to the preparation deal, you don't know if you'll be successful, but if you prepare with the mindset of you are going to win and la-da-da-da, then you won't have to worry about that. You can just go out there and perform and execute and let the let the whole deal play out. And then talks about generalship, so leadership. Talks about, I mean, it's really kind of, there's some philosophical stuff, and then there's stuff about war, like, you know, when you beat an army and you take over land and there's citizens there, and how do you treat them, and this and that. And so that is rather interesting, and it kind of played into another book that I read. I didn't finish it because it was very, like, extremely wordy, and the font size was like 5, and the pages were just so thick. But it was very interesting. But the history was so far out, like, it took place in BC. It was the generalship of Alexander the Great, and the way he conquered the whole known world and then tried to keep going. But one of the reasons why he was so good and why people respected him is because of kind of like what Sun Tzu was talking about, was after he had conquered these places and they took on the traditions and the cultures of, you know, the Greek society and whatnot, he treated them with compassion, and he didn't hurt them. He didn't kill off their women and offspring. He allowed the men who gave themselves over in surrender to join his army and whatnot. And so with that, then you have people who want to follow you, and and that's what he did. Now, he's a very interesting man, and I question some of the other things that he did, but besides the point of all that stuff, his leadership within his army and how he conducted, you know, all the different, I think they're called acropolises, which are just like big city-states, is what we would call them. He handled them very well, and that's why his reign, and before he died, lasted so long, but also so well. Then you have your David Goggins. It's good, but he's very cynical in his approach to how to be a man. It's dark, and so, I mean, there's some good things that come out of it, but also at the same time, no. Tony Dungy, he's got a book called, I can't remember what it is, but basically just gives his life story of how he became a football coach. And he's a believer, so he says a lot of the same things I do. There's a handful. I get all over the place, but it's fun. It's fun.
Did you always like to read?
No. I didn't really I didn't start to like reading until I started reading this, because then and that's the reason why I like history and nonfiction, is because a lot, like, outside of the lessons and the analogies and the parables and the teachings that Jesus and the Father give in the Old Testament and the New, there's also a ton of history that is right here that we can still see today. And so I want to go and read other history stuff and nonfiction, whatever, and see if, like, I can cross-reference something and see if something connects, or if it doesn't, or if it's just for the fun of the game. You know what I mean? So, do you like to read?
Yeah, I do.
What do you read?
I sometimes like to read fiction. I read Harry Potter for the first time a couple of years ago, and that was like, I like that part of reading sometimes, where it's like so addictive that you can't stop. And I try to tell teammates, friends, whatever, that it is like watching a good TV series and you can't just stop, and they can't really fathom it. But that's at least how I see it. But it's not that easy for me, at least, to find books kind of like this. And then a bigger thing, even though, is like reading nonfiction and picking brains of interesting people, I would say. Yeah.
Well, that's really good. You said fiction, and it reminded me of a book that I read in 24. Do you like Westerns?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. It's a book called The Preacher. And no, it's not in any way, the book actually never specifies why they call him the Preacher. But he's a fur trapper, and the book's like this thick. Dude, it's really good, I promise you. And there's a ton of them. Like, this guy who wrote these books made a ton of them, and I think some of them connect and some of their own stories. But this one's called The Preacher specifically. And he's a fur trapper, and he ended up getting stuck with having to steering the Oregon Trail, I believe, or something along those lines. And he ends up getting stuck having to escort a buggy with family to whatnot. But before he even does that, he does all these like different side quests and is sick. Like, he speaks the native tongue of the Native Americans and whatnot, and he knows different cues and signs in the nature because he's been out there so long. He's a mountain man, and some of the language gives you a really good picture, like in your mind, of like what he was looking at and the landscape he was in, and the fighting scenes in it are good to where like you can. It's almost like you said, you know, you're watching a TV series, or a movie. And so check out The Preacher. It's good.
What I just remember now, my friends told me when I speak with you, I have to ask you one question, and that is, do you know everybody on the football team?
I do.
And does everybody know everybody on the football team?
They should.
Okay.
So when I say I do, yes, I know all their names. There's some that I know briefly, and there's others that I know deeper than the others. So I mean, like, I can't just know everybody, because like I talked to you about having solid relationships.
You also don't know the ins and outs of everybody, of
Correct.
course not. Yeah.
But yeah, I could probably tell you a ton of their names right now. But to your other question, they better. That's what we were. That's the whole point of everything we were doing. Is we want good relationships with everybody. So
yeah, no, we just sometimes had that conversation because I mean, it obviously is a crazy amount of guys on those teams often. So yeah, that was just besides everything. They were just asked that.
That's a good question. I mean, yeah.
No, I have one question though coming back that I ask everybody that comes on here at the end of every episode. If you take all the experiences you've made in your life, all the goods and the bads and everything you've learned about life up until this point, what would you tell a younger version of yourself? Just some general advice you would give that person.
Yeah. I think personally for me, since it's a personal question, it'd be rather short. I would say, never faint in the day of adversity, give your life to Christ, and never look back.
Perfect. Jackson, thank you so much for taking the time today. That was so fascinating and interesting to hear about you and learn from you. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think we could probably talk on for hours and hours still, but I really enjoyed it today, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Same here. Thank you, Lewis, for having me on here and just giving me the opportunity, and then also for you sharing some of the things that you said you weren't a believer. That's perfectly okay. Just like you said, it's a personal decision you have to make. I pray that this conversation we had, touches your heart, and you just go and be curious, go seek, and I'm just grateful to now have this relationship with you, and we can continue to carry it on even past this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The World of Sports. I hope this conversation sparked your interest in sports and the people behind it. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with a friend and leave me some feedback in the comments. Once again, thanks for joining me in the world of sports.